If you are always trying to be normal, you will never know how amazing you can be. Maya Angelou.
Bending Not Breaking, Season 5, Episode 1, Rebel Spirit. And we are back.
We're back!
With another season.
Keyword we.
We are back with another season.
Another season.
Of Bending Not Breaking.
And another season of The Legend of Korra.
The most favorite of seasons.
Indeed.
Everyone's favorite season.
I am a big fan. I'm not going to lie.
I like season 2.
I am. Well, and as I already have, as we've started watching, I'm picking up on things that I didn't pick up on before. I'm seeing really lots of neat stuff that I didn't pick up on, and I'm really appreciating even more right now.
Max isn't with us tonight.
Bummer.
It's worth saying. He's still with us.
He's not with us at this time.
Yes, at this time. Not at this time.
Yes.
He's not here at this time.
Correct.
Well, he'll be back.
He'll be back.
I think.
Maybe.
He's got life. He should be back. We'll have fun. We have guests planned for the season that are going to be a lot of fun.
We sure do.
We've got so much to talk about because this is arguably this is such a polarizing season for folks, I think.
Yeah.
And I think part of that lends itself to having a lot of great topics of conversation for us to dive into.
So true.
And so I think that there's going to be a great opportunity for some really cool episodes and some really cool guests, and we're excited for everything that we're doing this season, and we're excited to get back to it.
Yeah.
And so Season 5 of Bending Not Breaking is coming your way right now.
Yeah, I also, for all our listeners who've been, steadfast and with us this whole time, I just want to express
Thankful, grateful.
Well, I'm grateful for them, but I also just want to share on this space while I have it in the capacity to do so, is how grateful I am to now be back in this conversation with you, because I feel like I have often missed things in the times where I have been alone that I know would have been better in a communal interaction that you provide. So I'm really grateful that you're back in this with me.
I'm excited to be back, and I'm grateful that you held down the fort for so long. I think one of the things about this podcast that I enjoy, and I think is at the heart of this podcast, is hopefully the humanity in others, and that means giving grace, and that means taking time to recognize when we needed a break or needed to navigate other life things, and having that be okay. And we appreciate that all of our listeners have allowed us to have that space. And because of that, we are able to come back and do this and hopefully provide a better season than we've ever provided before.
Yeah.
So super excited.
That
for
actually speaks really well to thank you for the grace you have offered us in not having an episode last week. We definitely intended to, but life got us by the horns, and so it goes.
Well, you had the quote. And if we're going back to our norm, that means that I've got
interesting choice of words.
The 30-second recap.
Yeah. Is that how we think we want to do this? Because I don't want to just default to something that we, have done in the past. Is that the best way to do this moving forward?
It is now. We should have discussed it earlier if we thought it wasn't. You should have made that known. I think we have to at this point.
All right. Well,
we don't have to. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
It's kind of our podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm 30 seconds. Put it on the clock.
You're already
I'm
prepared.
already in it.
All right, here we go. On your mark, get set, go.
Sailors were attacked in the Southern Sea by a mystical figure. Bolin and the Fire Ferrets get destroyed at professional firebending. Mako is now a cop and takes down the Triad group with a little bit of a whippy saying. That's fun. Asami is having trouble in the business world, which is a bummer. Korra uses the Avatar state to win a race, which is a very touchy subject for some fans. And then discuss going on vacation. Group heads to the South Pole and attends a festival. I hate fairs. Asami and Bolin go to meet Varric, and Unalaq takes over.
Well done. 1 second to spare.
Skipped a lot, but Unalaq takes over.
Well, you kind of had to.
Yeah, we get... That was 30 seconds is very quick.
Yeah, especially when we're out of practice, Yeah, I thought you did an exceptional job.
I hate fairs.
Why do you hate
I
fairs?
hate festivals.
You hate. Okay, those are two different things.
No, well, in this sense, I think they use the word festival.
Uh-huh.
It feels like a fair.
Uh-huh.
Let me be clear. I dislike state fairs.
Okay. Tell me more.
I don't believe in portable rides.
Okay.
I don't like them.
You don't like them, or what's that
Rides,
dislike rooted
if
in?
I'm going to get into something, it should not be able to be picked up and moved from location to location.
Like a car.
A car is the vehicle. If the car was consistently on a track that was like moving from place to place regularly, rides need to be permanent. Like a roller coaster that is permanent. I don't like getting on portable roller coasters. I don't believe in it.
All right.
Second of all, I think food at a fair, though people love it and say, I'm not interested.
Who doesn't love a deep fried?
I
whatever?
don't want a deep fried Oreo.
Deep fried Oreos are gross. Deep fried Snickers, on the other hand,
I don't want it.
really delicious.
Yeah, I don't want it. I don't like it.
Well,
And I
love
don't
it.
feel good after eating it.
I don't feel good after, but I feel really good during.
So I don't really enjoy it. And then unfortunately, state fairs in where we live are also filled with a lot of symbols that I don't think are indicative of an environment that I want to be in.
That is fair.
So,
Yeah.
and large groups of people. So many reasons that I'm like,
Yeah, especially in a COVID state, right? Or a post-COVID state, so to speak. I think that the fair. I did not go to the fair.
here's the thing,
Right.
though. Here's the thing with all of that, right? If you love the fair and find joy in it and aren't causing harm to others by participating in it,
Well, that's the rub, isn't it?
then then do it.
Yeah.
Like enjoy everything. You are not hurting me by going and eating your deep fried Oreo. If you want to, do it.
Unless you have COVID.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, let people enjoy things unless those things are causing harm to others.
Yeah.
That's where I stand.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually pretty big for this season.
Yeah, fair. Fair. So, okay. So we've alluded to this already, but today we're talking about the lens of normal. And you and I were brainstorming lenses before we even got to this season, and we were like, what are the things we need to talk about? And that is not necessarily the same question as what do we need to talk about like in this season, right? And we thought, and tell me if I'm speaking for you, but I feel like what we discussed led to this idea of needing to address this idea of normal, and episode 1 being a really good option for that. Considering what we're diving back in, it's the beginning of a season. We are in this state where a lot of people, and not state as in North Carolina where we are, but state of being, where a lot of people are talking about this
Getting back to
desire
normal.
to return to quote normal.
And we can dive into it, but I think what we specifically hear is back to normal.
Yes.
You very rarely hear like
Get to normal.
get to normal. It's always back to, and I think that that's a very interesting way of wording it. And I also think it really, what is normality, right? What is normal?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you're from a very broad sweep side of things, it's getting to a point of routine. It's getting a point to what is expected, what is a typical state or condition. So like things become normal and normalized over time, right?
Yeah.
So it's really weird to say, well, we want to go back to normal when ideally, if you're learning and growing, there's no back to ever, right?
Yeah.
Like you can take aspects of what was before, merge them with new knowledge and new experiences, and then create normal that is ahead of where we currently are. So every time I hear back to normal, it's like I don't want to go back to normal.
Well, and you know what I hear in that as well is echoes of, forgive me for being overtly political here, is echoes of "Make America Great Again," right? It's the same notion that America was once great, right? And so how do we return to that? Well, it begs the question, great for whom, right?
It ignores the negative states that were in existence prior to all of this.
Correct.
And doesn't give...
And it's the same thing with normal, right?
Yeah.
When we say we want to get back to normal, we're suggesting that the normal that we're trying to return to is good, right?
Now, there can be aspects of that, right? I think of that personally when I'm in, like, if I can reflect on moments in my life where I felt like all the pieces were coming together, or that I was in one of my best, healthiest states mentally, physically.
Yeah.
What was I doing in those moments that allowed that to kind of blossom and exist versus what am I not doing now? But even that is still in addition to new information that I have, new experiences that I have, feedback and relationships that are different than when they were then. And so it's still, you're not going back to that. It is sifting through the nuggets of the past and figuring out
how do we integrate our new learning and
Correct.
experiences into what was good, and also give ourselves space and grace, so to speak, in a way that allows us to invite a new normal.
What was that? What was the speech? It was the 1995 speech that Baz Luhrmann then turned into a song, but it wasn't Baz
Everybody
Luhrmann's.
loves sunscreen.
Everyone loves sunscreen, but it was initially someone else's.
Wear sunscreen. Everybody wears sunscreen.
But they talk about nostalgia being this idea of like, be weary of nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's typically people who are taking all their past experiences and like romanticizing it, sifting it through, and then cleaning it and giving you like little tiny nuggets that like were in all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, so you looked up the definition of this.
I did.
What is normal?
I already said it.
What's the clinic? Oh, I missed it. Say it again.
The usual, average, or typical state or condition. So what is that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When does it become normal, right? It's almost like, when do things become habit?
Yeah.
I don't know why habit's coming to my head right now.
What's interesting for me in that is that definition kind of allows for different normals to be present, right? And so what's normal for you versus what's normal for me, right? And then as we expand to our relationship with one another, what is normal for us, right?
Very much so, yeah.
And so there are 3 different normals there, right? And then it's normal in relation to my whole family, and then normal in relation to the society at large, and all of these different things. There's lots of different, like, for every relationship and every system that we're a part of, there's a different kind of normal that is present.
And an opportunity for us to evaluate that condition, right?
Yeah.
That opportunity to sit there and say, this is normal for us. Is that okay?
Is that how it should be?
Is that exactly
right?
Is that what it needs to be for this to be successful? It is normal sometimes for me to skip breakfast in the morning. Like, it's pretty normal for me to skip breakfast on my way out the door.
Yeah.
Should it be? Right? Yeah. So, like, those are the things that we have the opportunity to question.
Yeah.
The opportunity. And we see that in this episode specifically several times, right? So, are we ready to jump in?
Let's start from the beginning.
So, maybe not the beginning.
I got one from the beginning.
It's probably not normal that a demon spirit creature like wraps around a boat. Probably.
Yeah.
Maybe it is, but probably not normal.
Considering we didn't see it at all.
We don't get a whole lot of nautical.
time.
We don't get a whole lot of nautical lore in the Avatar verse.
Yeah. Well, this is in the Avatar history that is known to this point. This is the first time we've seen this, right? Aside from Kuruk and the stories that we hear from Kuruk's time.
We know there are dark spirits in existence.
Yes.
If you're going in chronological order.
Yes.
But you still only get that, like, kind of, right?
It's
like,
just,
you get,
it's very much not normal.
And it's in a book, and we hear about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. I
Rise of Kyoshi, it's great.
Yeah. Well, I think that's in Shadows, but it is what it is.
What's the first one?
That first one's Rise of Kyoshi.
Yeah, it's in that one.
Are you sure? I think
Yes.
we learned about it in
I haven't read Shadows.
Really?
Yeah, not yet.
What you doing?
Star Wars stuff.
Okay, well, we digress. Moral of the story is, I think from our perception, this is not a normal thing. And what we're learning in this episode is that it's happening more and more often.
We see it once. And so here's the thing, and this is, I think, an important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anecdotally, we are told that this is happening all over.
True. You're right.
Is it? Right? Like, is it?
That's hard because, I mean, we see evidence of it happening at
once,
the festival, right?
And then twice.
Yeah.
And we don't know if that's actually being triggered by
what? What is that
someone
being
at
triggered
this
by?
point, right?
Yeah.
We don't know if someone's prodding this
Sure.
who might have a connection to it.
That's a really good point.
But how often does that happen where one thing happens and that gets told like it's normal? I think of voter fraud, again, to like become political.
This is a thing.
It's a rampant thing, when it's like it's not actually a rampant thing.
Yeah.
There's data that does like the data does not support that that is a rampant thing. But when we listen to anecdotal evidence, it's very easy to hyperbolize those things, so we don't actually know if this is rampant around right now.
Even when it's not hyperbolized by one person, right? We think about how the media can hyperbolize, right? When we think about
how word of mouth does it.
Well, like Black Lives Matter, for instance. Oh, violence. No.
Right.
Like, what is it? 93%
3%
was nonviolent protests.
Correct.
Right. Whereas only 7%. I thought it was higher than that.
No, it's 93, but the issue, that specific study that you're quoting, then said that out of the 7%, more than half of those were instigated by
the cops.
Correct. So
yeah, so that's again just another live and recent example of how the media can condition how we perceive normal.
But even word of mouth, right? Like there's this it's even. I think, it's normal for this person to behave that way. And that's really one person's expectation of it, but then friends believe it, whatever it might be. So, not to get too far down into a really weeded hole, but I think it is important to lift up that, like, what we are being told by nARK that this is happening all over. We, as the audience,
don't know that.
See it twice.
And we believe it.
And we believe that it's rampant.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point, and I hadn't really thought about that as something that nARK might be. It may be happening, but also what if this is something that nARK is doing to serve his larger purpose?
Well, to condense that all into a takeaway point, it's when someone tells us something is normal, there are other factors at play that may or may not be true for that thing.
Yeah,
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Oh, it's normal for kids to go through this experience as an elementary school, right? Like
boys will be boys.
Today, students that I work with were telling me that they had an active shooter drill a day. I refuse to believe that is currently the norm. Schools do it all across the country.
Yeah.
I refuse to believe that that's okay, right? Like that's something that we should be okay with elementary school students going through on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So we have to push back on what is told, like, oh, it's normal, it's fine, or it's not fine, but it's happening.
Yeah, and I think what this just raises is how do we question what is normal in a way that is productive, in a way that is useful? And I think, y'all, this whole series is an example of watching how Korra does that. Right? Season 2 is the beginning of what will be the end of the final season, right? So spoiler alert, but like when Korra is progressing towards what will be a new normal for this entire world and having a new spirit portal in Republic City, right? And instead of shutting it down, instead of closing it, and she is like, no, we're going to embrace this new normal, right? And we're going to see where it takes us and how it can help us grow.
Well, something I appreciate about Korra, every season, it is a pushing of her own boundaries to a new normal.
Yes.
Right. If we are growing and becoming better and working towards a better society and us being better, constantly pushing ourselves out of our norm is really important. It doesn't mean that you have to completely shut down every routine that you have.
Well, and we see Korra shut down,
it just
right?
means pushing past it, right? Like pushing past. I have the visual of a weird balloon or membrane that you have to just push yourself out of. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but
it's like being born again.
Sure. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, I love this parallel that you're drawing us to for all the growth that the world at large is grappling with in terms of having to reassess what normal is consistently throughout this series. I love how you're aligning that with Korra's personal journey as well. And we're seeing that growth of an assessment of normal through Korra's experience.
Right. For her, the norm has been training with Tenzin.
Yep.
I don't think that her exploring new ways of learning is inherently an issue.
No.
Right?
I very much don't.
The fact that she is wanting to learn from other mentors, I think, is a positive.
Yes.
Unfortunately, you've got a very personable, charismatic person who is wanting to be her mentor that is also wanting to victimize her.
Utilize her. Yeah. Treat her as object.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
That she's got no way of knowing.
Well, it's interesting because I didn't pick up on the contempt that Unalaq has for the Southern Water Tribe
from the
get-go.
Yeah.
Right? I just I got a bad when I was watching it before, it's I get a bad feeling about this guy. And then at the end where he's like, only I can teach you. I'm like, that's the red. And
there's a couple of those moments where he speaks in absolutes where I'm like, I've at this point, 6 years ago when I first watched the series, that language wasn't a red flag for me.
Yeah, same.
Now,
very much
a red flag.
Well, and that's what I was getting at is when I was watching it and really paying attention and taking notes, prior to that, this was my I don't like him moment. But now I'm assessing his language the whole time, and I'm like, ouch. He's truly expressing contempt in everything that he says aloud. It's contempt for the change in the Spirit Festival. It's become, this pomp of, it's not meaningful anymore, and it's trashy essentially.
I don't like fairs either.
Yeah, but you don't you don't say it like he did. There's just this contempt for change that Unalaq expresses, and I'm curious about where that's coming from. Is it rooted in this, oh no, the spirits are really, really struggling right now, and if you had known that, then this wouldn't be a problem? Or is this from a now perspective, thinking about it, oh no, this is all me trying to manipulate Korra to be on my side?
Anytime that someone says something along the lines of, this is the only way for you to learn, I am the only way for you to learn, I am the only way for you to be successful in this, big old red flag.
Yeah.
And we hear him make several comments to that at a certain point.
And I think he used the phrase spiritual decay, and it's contempt in the name of spiritual decay of the Southern Water Tribe.
It's never a good sign to me when someone harps so much on falling away from traditions.
Oh gosh, absolutely. I agree.
Because we had this conversation with Ritual and with Casper a couple seasons ago. We've talked about tradition a little bit, but this idea that tradition needs to grow to serve the purpose and intent that is life-giving.
Yes.
And so anytime someone's like, oh, this is not tradition, well, cool, let's have a conversation about what that is and push to the new normal of what it needs to be.
And this is why Unalaq is such an interesting, villain, so to speak.
We don't know that yet.
No, but yes. But one of the reasons he's so compelling, especially early on, is he's right. Also, he is the only one that can as that we know of that can teach Korra how to do the spirit bending that he does. Right? We don't know anyone else. And we don't learn of anyone else later, aside from who Korra teaches, that is able to do this, right? So that complicates this. We also, he is right if it's one of those things where, and this again, you're throwing a wrench in it by saying he's causing it intentionally, but assuming that there are dark spirits, let's assume that they are there, they're present, and this is actually happening in effect in response to the way that is the world at this time, right? Then all of a sudden, he's also right about that, right? And so it just complicates, how do you navigate when, hey, you're right about this, you're right about this, but everything else that you're doing, I can't get on board with. And that's what we don't really see, Mm-hmm. And that's really hard when it's family. That's really hard when it's people you care about deeply. And right now, Korra doesn't have a intimate relationship with this guy. It's not like they're, buddy or anything. But when that dynamic is there and they're, weaving this story that is rooted in truth, but they have taken it to such an extreme that it is no longer true, but it is false to the point of extremism, right? That's really hard to grapple with.
And so that brings us back to this moment. Let's talk about what it means to be unwilling to shift normality in a culture or in a practice. Because we see this a little bit, and we've seen it in Tenzin before, and we've seen moments where Tenzin has changed before. It's one of my favorite moments in the first season.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
One of my favorite moments in the first season is when Tenzin realizes that professional bending is a way for Korra to learn and grow and develop.
Yeah.
Really cool moment where he shifts away from his normal and his normalcy to do what's best for Korra.
Yeah.
We get this moment in this episode where he kind of falls back from that and says, like, you're good at Korra airbending.
Yeah.
You need to be good at, like, normal airbending. Real airbending.
Which is code for normal, right?
And it's also wrong. Like, what is that? Like, what is that when someone's, like, yes, there are foundational pieces in most types of disciplines that are very helpful and typically going to be of some sort of positivity when learning things. Right? Piano, percussion, leadership, right? Like, it doesn't matter. There are fundamentals that can be used. But to say that that's the only way to learn or to be good or to have that be a positive thing, like, Korra bending
is a form of colonialist thinking.
Correct. And also it's trying to hold on to the normal instead of being willing to create a new normal with those experiences. And so what do we see happen? We see Korra leave.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to me right now of what we're seeing as the great resignation, right? All of these staff members, all of these employees that are leaving organizations because we don't see organizations merging to meet their needs in a time that has been pretty tumultuous over the last 2 years. And so you're seeing people leave for good or for bad. Some people are leaving to go to a what they perceive to be grass is greener, and it turns out it's not.
Yep.
Some people are leaving to go to where the grass is greener. Turns out it is.
Yep.
But what you're seeing are companies that are unwilling to shift their culture into a new normalcy, but are trying to hold on to what they were doing 2 years ago.
And we're in a different place.
Are struggling.
Yeah.
We're seeing strikes because of it. We're seeing employees leave because of it. And it's all because we're seeing an unwillingness to shift what we've done. This is how we do it. That doesn't fly anymore.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to change that. And so we see that happen on this episode when you see Tenzin and Korra's father, which I don't understand why I can't remember his name. Tonrock, thank you. Tarlok is different.
Tarlok, Unalak.
Tonrock. Yep. But you see this happen. She's not seeing the results she wants to see. It's not working for her to do it the way that it's always been done. So here's someone's promising a better way.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And she leaves for it.
Yeah.
Who can blame her?
I don't want to.
And to be fair, as Matt, like, it is heartbreaking to watch that happen with Tenzin.
Yeah.
You see the pain it causes Tenzin in that moment, and we feel it.
And the grace with which he leaves.
Correct. But I don't think she was out of line, and I don't think that she said it in an uncompassionate way.
Yeah, well, to be fair, they didn't, to the point where Tenzin accepted it and said, it was an honor serving you. They didn't handle it well.
No.
Right? It's not like there
They
was no discussion.
It
was not a discussion. It was you need to listen to me.
Correct.
It wasn't let's talk more about this.
Correct.
It was listen, this is what's best for you.
This is the way it's gonna work.
Yeah.
And so we see her
my way or the highway.
And that doesn't pan out.
Doesn't work.
You can't hold on to your normal, especially when other people are involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to be able to communicate and talk and move forward with a willingness to be able to do it. So what's the takeaway points? What are some highlights if we're putting this practice, for taking all of this information and creating takeaway practices from it? What are some of those things that we've already talked about?
I kind of want to rephrase that just a bit, and in the sense that it's not necessarily what we've already talked about, but what we've already talked about on past seasons.
Sure.
Right? And which is most of the time the first step is awareness. Right? And so how do we cultivate awareness, and how do we assess our behavior, and what are the things that we can look for in our behavior that says that we're looking for normal, right? Or if we're looking for a quote return or looking back to normal. And I think of like all the examples that we could have listed and talked about. Like one, Bolin wants to return to normal with the fire ferrets. He went back to the team with new team members.
That team's so bad.
And it just they didn't do well. And then Asami oh well, I don't know if you knew this, but because of your father we've lost everything. And she's like, well, we're gonna get back on top. And it's again this want to return to normal, which is for her being on top in the industry. And there's so many like this whole deal with Varric where this
he's such an intriguing
this
character.
room is full of a culture that has normalized like placating Varric, and that's not healthy for any sort of inventive
and here comes
person.
Bolin.
And then in comes Bolin and is like, I'm going to disrupt normal right here and say, hey, you're not actually levitating right now. And Varric's mad. He's like, why would you let me look foolish, right? And it's like, I don't think often we want there's an element of respect for being told that when what we're doing, like, don't just tell me I'm normal when I'm not, right? Don't tell me and compare me to what you want me to be. Help me be who I am. And that's what I see in Varric. So what I'm seeing there in all of these things and all of these moments is when I am seeking something from other people, what am I seeking from them? And like really asking that question before I really look for an answer. Because if I know what I'm looking for, then that can like, why do I need approval from this group? Or why do I want to return to be back on top? Or what am I missing when and why do I want to return to the fire ferrets? What did they give me that I'm missing? Can I get that elsewhere? Right? And so how do we assess and ask questions about what we're actually wanting and what we're actually looking for? Like, how do we put language to what the quote normal is in a way that allows us to move past the language of normal? Like, because when I think about what I want to return to that was quote pre-COVID, there are things I want to return to. I miss being able to do a lot of things, but what that also, like, were those things really not great for people other than me, right? And is that something that I'm willing to negotiate anymore? And so that was a whole big rant. How do you hear all of that? What comes to your mind? What's missing there?
Oh, I don't know. That was a lot. I think of it's so strange to me because there's a sense of me that appreciates Boomy. Let's talk Boomy for a second.
I love Boomy.
Boomy is authentically himself.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone would characterize him as quote unquote normal.
You're right.
In this show. I don't want people to feel like they have to lose authenticity to be a part of normal or creating new cultures of normal. I think what normal can be is it doesn't necessarily mean exactly how you show up inside of a space or inside of the world, right? You can be authentically you and be normal for you, and that can be very not normal for other people.
Yeah.
But if it goes to your authenticity and doesn't harm others, then like, go for it, right?
It just reminds me of the Maya Angelou quote that we started with, right? Like, when you're trying to be normal, you never know how amazing you can be.
But we are normalizing other things by doing that and creating a culture of normal around that. And so normal is this energy that shifts constantly in a space and can be 1,000 different things in in this room. What normal is, it's a very abstract thought process. But I think for me, it's just thinking about how people's authenticity plays into what is quote unquote normal, and making sure that we don't sacrifice that for fitting in to a space or a thing or a culture. But how do we find our values and shift to new normalized things? And so, whether it's in this show, whether it's in our society, I'm losing the thread. Bring it together, Ben.
What's helping me there is, rather than letting normal dictate your actions, how do you ethically shape what normal looks like? right? So we are called as people who are, theoretically moral and ethical to shape normal to be something that is conducive to loving one another. And I think that when normal is not doing that, we are called to shape it rather than to conform to it. And I think that's kind of what I heard there. Maybe not exactly, but that's where my thoughts were going.
Well, it's a moment where that is normal and not normal at the same time.
Yeah.
Is I love the moment of Katara saying, like, your siblings are going on this trip with you. That's a very not normal thing for those siblings to be joining Tenzin for an extended period of time. That's not a normal thing. What is normal there is Katara's care for people. What is normal there is Katara's...
It's her integrity.
Her integrity and her want to be able to heal others and support others. And she thinks that this is going to be a good way to do it by doing something that is very not in the norm. Yeah. And so that is a moment that is very normal and also very not normal.
Well, it's Katara's quote normal is confronting Tenzin's, and it's saying, hey, this is this is something that I really want to push you on, and I think that it needs to change. And I tend to agree with Katara in this case, right?
Well, it's probably important to highlight now, as we've highlighted so many times before on the show, is that normality is not necessarily a good or bad thing.
Yes.
We have to question whether or not the normal that we
it
are
requires
existing
discernment.
In. Correct.
It requires discernment. Yeah. Well, and I love how you point out, like, who are living into our values can be normal, right? And then is it living into our habits, or are we living into are those habits within our values?
Are they life-giving habits?
Are they life-giving habits, right? And I think that how do we then cultivate what is normal for us? And then when something is around us pushing us to do something different, and that's what's considered normal, it's how do we politely say that that's outside of my integrity?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Hey, Unalak, the language you're using right now is outside of my...
I want to learn from you, but the way that you're talking about my father's and my tribe is unfortunate.
Yeah, and not okay.
It's not acceptable. Yeah, I wonder how that would be different. And of course, like, I don't blame Korra at all for not having those skills. But
what, 17 at this point?
17, and like who would have taught her that, right?
Right.
It's not like Tenzin has those skills. So, I just think there's so much there to think about. Wow.
Mako. I don't know why I'm thinking of Mako. Let's talk Mako real quick.
Mako's hard in this episode because I so feel Mako because he's just trying his best to do it right.
But notice so there's a moment where he does what he thinks is what should be the norm, and it doesn't work out well for him.
Oh, it goes really not great.
Right, the festival, he just says, like, I'm here to be supportive without like any, and she was clearly looking for some soundboarding, some suggestion.
Well, and that was based off of the first interaction,
correct?
Right? He learned that when he responds a certain way, Korra doesn't like it, so he tried responding another way.
Pendulum went too far.
Korra didn't like it,
right?
And then this third time at the end of the episode, she smiles, and
because he had probably the best answer that he had all episode.
Yeah,
by saying, "It seems like you're leading with your heart," and I think that's the right thing to do. Other than that, I don't know. Can we talk about normalizing
the power of I don't know?
Correct.
Yeah.
It is so okay to sit there and say, like, I don't know.
I don't have words.
Let's find out.
I don't know.
Yeah, emotionally, it can just be like, I don't know. I'm here. I'm present.
I want to sit in this with you.
But I don't know. I don't know what the right step is. And I think that's such I like that answer a whole lot.
It's a great answer.
I like the honesty of I don't know, but I'm here, and I'll be here, and you might make the wrong decision, but like I'll be here for you when that happens, or you might make the right decision, and I'll be here for you when that happens. And I think that that's a very powerful response.
Yeah, I agree.
He blows it later, but
yeah,
in the series, but
later. This is the whole. There's a lot there for sure. Yeah.
Teens.
Teens.
Little angsty teen drama. What else in this episode?
So the only thing that is coming to mind is I also, this is the first time we meet Ginger. And I know that this is a button topic for you, but thinking about the only space we see Ginger in right now is as object in a way.
Yeah.
Right? As look at this prop that I have for this new movie that's coming up, and in comes Ginger.
Mm-hmm.
Poses a few times and then leaves. And I think that Varric is cultivating this new media that, you know, we are very familiar with as we are watching him create what we're watching. In
Talkies.
A sense. Yeah. But it's interesting to think about like the persuasive possibilities that come from being able to reach people in such a way, and how that comes with ethical responsibilities because you're in relationship with people by showing mass things to lots of people.
Mm-hmm.
And what are the values that he's putting on screen, that he's showing to the greater world? And I wonder if the objectification of Ginger is a normal that we want to promote moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
No. I don't think we do.
No, I'm just saying that that's a real thing. That's a real, because that's such a real answer. We see behaviors in Avatar and in Legend of Korra outside of our readings into it, but just in general as a viewer, we see behaviors from Bolin, from even Iroh, that are set up as jokes, that are promoting women as objects.
Yeah.
To be gawked at or touched, or that are in a way with that's the creators of this show also have that same ethical responsibility.
Yeah.
I think, and I think it's fine for us to call out when they drop the ball on it, and we see moments of that in season 2 later on.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's worth lifting up here also so that we can pull out of the show for a little bit and think about also the way that we are being influenced by the show. You know, it's not just the Legend of Korra, but Avatar and the comics, and thinking about the representation, or rather lack of representation, right? Avatar for its day was quite progressive, right? And I think about the current day, like the Dragon Prince, what we see is different abilities. And we see, you know, the Blind Bandit, Toph herself is, you know, one who is differently abled and who is a main character. And then we see in the Dragon Prince all of these various characters that are mute, deaf, and they're working through all of these different abilities. And I think that it's not just race, but also, as we will learn in this series, like LGBTQIA+ alphabet soup representation. It's about race. It's about ability. It's about all kinds of things that are sometimes represented, sometimes underrepresented, often, and then things that are. And so I think it's worth just realizing that what we're watching and what we're consuming is affecting our understanding of what is normal, and we need to be critical of that as well.
You know, to step away from Avatar and Legend of Korra for a second to talk about some real world implications of that.
Absolutely.
We're seeing that happen with other forms of media right now. As you're listening to this episode, Eternals has already come out. You know, we're recording it before its actual release.
What's Eternals?
The newest MCU project, the newest Marvel film. It's already been review bombed by straight cis white males who are upset that there's representation of...
Can you explain what review bombing is?
Review bombing is when a group of people will intentionally negatively review movies on forms of media to keep people from seeing it, maybe to keep from going, to make it to dissuade. It's a very silly concept, because if a movie's bad, it's going to be bad, and it's going to get low reviews. And if it's a good movie and you're review bombing it, it's clearly because you are upset about
Yeah.
things and progress. So it's like from a concept, it's very flawed in
Are there
general.
examples of prior movies that this is helpful
Happened
for
to Black
context?
Panther, happened to Captain Marvel, happened to a lot of sequel Star Wars films. It happened with The Last Jedi, and so it takes place typically when we see female leads, when we see leads of color, when we see an emphasis on characters that may have diverse abilities of some sort, and so we, it's happening with Eternals right now. We have to push the normal of what our normal is, because our normal is a lot of white male straight leads.
Yes.
Majority of them.
Yeah.
And when you see a fraction of that changing, a movie is working to change that. Thousands of movies come out a year. One of them is looking to put people of color in the lead roles and shift the narrative and give opportunities to people who typically have not had those. Hopefully provide representation that's positive. And you see mass amounts of people fight against it. We have to shift the norm being straight white male characters, because the reality is, when you look at us on a global level, straight cis white males aren't the majority, and yet they are in film, television, storytelling. And so, that's what we're seeing right now, is how do we need to push that normal and say, no, we need more of this. People deserve to see themselves as the hero. People deserve to see stories that they feel like they can be a part of and relate with. But we're seeing that right now in terms of representation and when people try to push that normal, the backlash that comes from it sometimes.
Well, and we see it in the difference between how Avatar Korra and Avatar Aang are treated, right?
By fandoms.
Yep. Absolutely. Like, they are treated completely differently in the fandom and in the discourse. So I think it's worth just kind of revisiting this idea that we're not just talking about how normal is with these characters, but also how we are being influenced by what we're watching.
Correct.
And in general, I think that the Avatar verse is incredibly beneficial in a great, positively formative experience.
So we see so many people connect with these characters, connect with that moment of Korra and Asami in season 4, connect with Kiyoshi's character throughout the books. There's a reason that people are latching on to that, and part of that is because it's not very prevalent. So when it does happen, it's meaningful and means a lot. And so hopefully we are consistently checking our normal by, the media that I consume, am I consistently consuming specific types of media?
Yeah.
One of my greatest checks for that, an example that I use, is when I create like my top 10 movies list or like top 10 albums list, because I like to rank things, right? If it's full of white males, I kind of sit there and say, like, I've done a poor job of pushing my own boundaries as to what I am consuming. And that's a pretty big radar thing for me.
Well,
it's like my litmus test.
The phrase pushing our boundaries, I think, is really helpful there, because if we think of ourselves as what is normal fits within a circle for us, then we have to consistently reevaluate what is normal, because if it's not in the circle, then it's not normal. But like, wait a second, I can just expand the circle. And it can get bigger. We have to grow our edge, so to speak. And I think about edges and things like that. And I've just been learning about, I think about, what does being on the margin of society mean, right? It means you're on the edge. What does it mean when you are differently abled, when you are at the end of life and at the beginning of life, right? Babies are very differently abled and entirely dependent. Adults that are in hospice, right, are at the end of life, are very differently abled. And we have to include all types of bodies, right, all types of people in what it means to have a normal life, because that is normal. It is normal to be born. It is normal to die, right? And so if we forget that and we only center the stages of our life where we are at our greatest capacities, then we're missing something, and normal isn't full. And so like I think we have to evaluate that and be mindful of that as well.
Absolutely. Any other things we want to dive into this episode before we take a quick break, get into our practice, get into our gratitude, all that fun stuff?
I think I'm good.
All right, we'll be right back with more Bending Not Breaking in just a moment. And we are back. We got a few more things to do. We're going to do a little new segment today.
New segment.
Little something new.
New segment.
Little highs and lows.
Yeah.
Little airbending, earthbending.
Interesting.
There's no negative connotation to earthbending, but air versus earth. Yeah.
You just saying,
we'll figure out a new name for it later. Little highs and lows. Little roses and thorns.
Yeah.
Little prickly, not prickly.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the reasons I think we wanted to bring this in is that sometimes we get so lost in the lens that we forget to appreciate the things that are just in the episode that don't speak to that. And this kind of gives us an opportunity to lift up some of those things that we're like, I didn't love this moment, or wow, that was a really, really cool moment, right? So Sunshine, you get to, which one do you want to do first? What do you think?
Start with the things that maybe something that's a little bit of a low or a little bit of a...
All right, let's hear it.
I find myself being angry with Korra.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's important to highlight because it's very easy to be mad at her for the decisions that she makes through the show.
Yeah.
And I viscerally feel those at times in this episode, and then I have to put myself in check to be like, no, this is a completely typical reaction from someone who, is going through changes, and for someone who is upset or not feeling heard, or why am I mad at her through this when others are also not contributing to her success by shifting up their norm and things? And so but I find myself, I don't like that I catch myself and being like, oh, Korra, you silly person. And then I'm like, but she doesn't.
So what moment are you pointing to specifically?
I think about, specifically probably her choosing to go with Unalaq. But even moments where she snaps back at Tenzin before they even leave the temple, where she has a smart remark, and I'm like, but that's teenagers can do that and are still learning, and why am I mad at this? Do I see myself doing that and hate when I do it, or do I not like when people do that to me? But I also have to question those things because I don't like getting smart aleck responses from students that I'm working with, but I also, am I not seeing them? Am I not looking for the reason that they're giving those responses?
Interesting.
And so I think it's very easy, and we hear it, right? Oh, Korra's mean or angsty or, disrespectful, and it's like, yeah, but through the lens you're looking through in that moment, are there other things that we're missing that are contributing to that? So it's a weird dual sided where I don't like those moments, but at the same time it's probably because I'm like, I jump to conclusions or I'm not happy that that's where my mind first went.
Yeah, no,
So
it's interesting that it's not necessarily what happened in the show, but how it's making you think about yourself in a way that and mine's very similar. Mine's my low here for this episode is Bolin, and really just kind of the entirety of his character in this episode and his reactions with Desna and Eska. And I found myself laughing and then getting mad that I laughed right? When he's like, "Oh, who are those two lovely people getting off the boat?" And Korra's like, "Well, that's Desna and Nesca, and one's a boy." And he's like, okay, cool. Which one's the?" Yeah. And so it's just like I find myself like, well, if you find them both attractive,
Then like you find them both attractive.
then you find them both attractive.
Like
and
there's
it's just
nothing
like,
wrong with that.
and I found myself getting annoyed with myself because I was like, I laughed because I like that was meant to be funny. And I laughed. And then I was like, but I don't want to laugh at that, right? I don't like that's not who I want to be. That's not how I like but and so I immediately was questioning that and thinking about it with myself, and I just felt icky every time Bolin was on screen because it was about Ginger and he was oogling at Ginger.
Yep.
It was about like him being like as your boyfriend or as your slave, and he was like, "Okay, let's do it." And it was just like it was just I felt I didn't love it. That was my low.
Yeah. What about your high?
I found myself really appreciating the beauty of this episode in terms of how it was drawn. There's just so many different little moments that I was drawn to as I was paying attention, in like just the beauty of this Northern Water Tribe ship, but really like the little details of having Aang in the carnival ride and Momo and Appa were all present. But the moment that really I found was beautiful was when Tone Rock comes in and is water bending. And he just does this really smooth and elegant, like something that you wouldn't expect from brawny Tone Rock in a way. And he just comes in and it's just this beautiful display of water bending to, contain this enraged spirit. And I found that moment to be like a moment of awe in a way that I really enjoyed.
I think for me, I love the moment of the air racing, but also that entire scene I really enjoy. Also because of the sibling arguments.
Yes, so real.
Prior to going on vacation, and I just imagine them like picking at each other the entire bison ride and just boat rides and just them picking at it. Like it felt very familiar to me. It was filled with joy and.
It's those ordinary moments, right?
Just like that just felt so much like me prior. Like I'm Milo before going on vacation, trying to get my older siblings to like pick fights with each other. She said this. You gonna let that happen?
Yeah.
She said you couldn't have the. For me growing up, it was like she said you couldn't use the CD player.
Yeah.
Like
you just dated yourself there.
Yeah. Well, had a little, don't skip CD player that I put on and had to have batteries for and keep extra batteries because it didn't recharge. You couldn't plug it in to recharge it. You just had to use it. Yeah. But I really enjoyed that moment.
Yeah. So this is our new segment, our highs and lows. We might come up with a great name, or you might come up with a great name.
Yeah, let us know. Hit us up on them social medias.
We'd love to hear your ideas.
BNB_pod.
Yeah. But now we're going to move into something that is a bit more traditional for us, which is our...
Back to the norm.
Our devotion. Yeah, we are returning to this because we continue to find value in this exercise. And so this week, our element is water. And for those of you, since this might be the first episode for some of you who are listening, well, first of all, this is the first time we've recognized that, so thank you for bearing with us until now. But yeah, what we do...
welcome!
Yeah. What we do
Excited to have you.
During this segment is we combine our lens with one of the elements from the Avatar cycle. And what we do is we try to set an intention based off what our discussion was about and what we learned and where we want to go from here in relation to that element. And we switch elements every time going through the Avatar cycle so that we maintain balance and think about the different aspects of ourselves in terms of those elements. So, Sunshine, I'd love to start with you and hear your intention, your goal in terms of normal and water.
This is so when we talk about shifting our normalcy to meet the needs, water does that, right? Liquid, gas, solid.
It seems like a very easy element to do this with.
Well, correct. But that's exactly what it does, right? It's ice when you need it to be, and then you know it's water when you need it to be. And I don't drink ice, right? Like I
Yeah.
need it to be nourishing when it's a liquid form, but I need it to cool things as a solid, and we need it as a gas. And so I think, for us, for me, it's shift that way, right? Normalcy needs to change to meet what our goals are, what we need normalcy to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so there has to be a willingness to change out of one normal state to get to the other. And I think for me, that's what I need to do, and questioning where I need to be and what that looks like, whether that's career-wise,
Yeah.
whether that's locationally,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's relationally with people. It's just this idea of you have to be willing to change to fit the needs, and then allow that to be the new normal for a time, and then you have to change out of that as well. And so I think that's kind of my goal for the week, is to evaluate those things and just be aware of them.
Yeah, I think as you were speaking, it just made me nervous to think about how that could be interpreted also. And because I think about how water also shifts and changes based off of the environment that it is in.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. And so water is fluid in that it adapts to its environment. And when that is taken too far, it can also be dangerous.
Yeah, I think it's
a
fair.
form of conformity that cements what normal is. And so rather than being ice and melting in a hot environment and turning into something else per the environment, it's thinking about, okay, I realize that I'm quote melting. What can I do to help cool the people around me? And so it's just like realizing that we are changing, but also making sure that we are not just conforming. We are purposefully changing in a way. And so I think that's what you meant, but I
think that's an important thing to lift up. Right?
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. Okay. So mine is thinking about how water is a purifier. And
Brita.
yeah. Yeah. I wasn't necessarily thinking about that, but sure. I think about when it's the ultimate solvent,
Sponsor
right?
us.
It's the ultimate. It's yes, it's the ultimate like purifier. So when a poison is mixed with water, and lots of like water is able to dilute it so that it is not as poisonous.
Yeah.
Right. And so what that does is it makes it so that water has the potential to, in a problematic way, take on too many poisons in an effort to solve the problem. So unless you have a way to purify and rest and play in order to recover, then this is probably difficult. But I realize that I'm in a position of privilege often. And so how do I use my capacity to purify in this watery element to address what normal is, and whether I'm assuming and contributing to an ethical normal, if that makes sense.
Normal's so broad.
Yeah, it is.
Abstract.
And it's just like, I also think about like our intentions just now were both very not tangible. They were both like very up in the clouds. And I often think that we can get away with setting goals that are, this is a mindset that I want to be in the next week. But I also think that it's important that sometimes, and we don't have to do it now, but I think that we will kind of bounce in between. Sometimes it's important to have very tangible goals that are easily accomplishable, right?
Do something this week that challenges the norm.
Yeah, like
anything.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as it doesn't harm other people.
Yeah.
If it's life-giving.
So I think that we like, this is both of those goals were, if I'm kind of going back to our Brene Brown miniseries, those are both like deliberative goals.
You did a Brene Brown miniseries?
Shocker.
You almost made it through an entire episode without mentioning Brene Brown.
You were on one of the episodes, bro.
I know. No, I remember being there. I'm just saying we almost made it through this whole episode.
Almost. To be fair, I wasn't like quoting her or anything, but I do think that.
And then it clicked, and you had to do it.
I don't even remember what I was gonna say.
Tell me about Brene Brown miniseries.
I probably talked about whatever I was talking about on the miniseries is what I was gonna say, but I don't remember what I was talking about. Anyway, it is what it is. I appreciate you all for being with us for this episode. It is such a joy to be back with Korra. I've missed her in a way. I went and binged the whole season, and now I get to restart it and really focus, and I'm really excited to get to some of these episodes.
Yeah. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
So much.
All right. Well,
Gratitude.
our favorite segment.
Yeah.
This is the end.
This is the end.
Dun, dun, dun. All right. So, since you brought it up,
Yeah.
who are you grateful for?
Katara.
Tell me more.
It's because of the moment that I already highlighted. I love the way that she...
Let's be real. We're always grateful for Katara.
Yeah, I know.
Stan account.
Really, yep.
Like, this is just the end.
Big
but,
old Stan account.
Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
I love the fact that she is willing to that she cares so deeply about the people that are around her. There's the moment where Tenzin's siblings are kind of giving him grief and kind of picking on him and laughing, and he's kind of pulling his hair out, and the look that she's giving is one that is such... There's so much care.
There's so much understanding.
There's so much
too.
understanding. There's so
Yeah.
much empathy. There's so much...
And amazing
Just-
how that was drawn. I just got chills thinking about
Right.
how they communicated that so
just
well.
by her facial, but because I've been in that moment where you see something happening that you don't love, or you see something happening that's causing harm, and I love that she finds a way to intervene, and I don't always do that, and I think that that's really important, and so I really give all my gratitude to Katara this episode.
I love it. Mine's for Tenzin. And one of the reasons is like Tenzin he makes a lot of mistakes. But one of the things I really just appreciate about Tenzin is his capacity to acknowledge mistakes as well and to gracefully know when it is time to move on and change. And this moment at the end of the episode where he realizes that this is no longer a conversation that his attitude is working in. He changes his attitude and says, "It has been an honor serving you," and then he walks away. And I think that like how he handled Korra in this episode, and even that language is troubling, but how he like spoke with her and talked to her and engaged with her, this whole episode has been hard and troubling. But this moment is just so beautiful for me that he can be like, all right, this is my time to move on, and I am going to say it, and then I'm going to move on.
It's like it's a weird parallel. It's like the movie Big Daddy, where yeah, well, hear me out. Hear me out.
Left turn there, bud.
Yeah, well, hear me out. There's that moment in that episode where where Adam Sandler's character knows that he has to step away for what's best for the child, and it is weird to be able to pull that parallel with Tenzin, but it's one that both of those moments make me feel. And Tenzin does this knowing that in this moment this is what is best for Korra, and I agree. I really appreciate that that level of grace.
I appreciate that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Who knew?
Okay.
Who knew where we would go this episode?
Who knew? Well,
From Avatar to Big Daddy.
yeah.
Yeah.
More importantly, thank you.
Thank you. Where can they find all of us?
Yeah, BNB_pod
Yeah.
on all the things.
All the Twitters.
Yep. Instagram,
Yep.
Facebook.
We're on there.
We have a Facebook group
Yeah.
for people who are on Facebook.
Just want to join and chit chat and talk and
Yeah, we also have a Patreon where
Oh,
you
yeah.
can support us and
love that.
help us continue to do what we are doing. We have 3 tiers that you can choose from. Lots of cool stuff offered there.
We haven't done one in a while, but send us your voicemails, your thoughts.
I'd
a
love
little,
to have a
little
new one,
2-minute
yeah.
voicemail, voice memo to thearkofe@gmail.com
Big thanks to the Ark of E for hosting
putting
this
us on.
podcast.
Yeah. And so, but send us a little 2-minute voicemail on something you thought was, meaningful to you this episode or any episode of Legend of Korra.
Absolutely. And if you have time, if you don't have financial support and you don't want to support us financially, don't worry. You can always write us a wonderful 5-star review.
Yeah, rate and review. Love
Yeah,
that.
we love that. Might even read one. We'll see.
Ben, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for being here this evening.
It's been my pleasure.
This has been a wonderful night. That's our show. I'm Sunshine.
And I'm Ben.
And this has been Bending Not Breaking. Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.